Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
One of the first questions that people ask in Pakistan is, who is Irshad Manji? And I mean, critics say that there is a misconception about who Irshad is. Some people say that she's a radical, some people say that she's outlaw Muslim. I think that people would love to know, who is Irshad Manji and what's her objective?
Let me tell you where I stand, first and foremost. I have always been clear that Islam began as a religion of justice, but it has become corrupted into an ideology of fear. And it is we Muslims, primarily, who are responsible for the corrupting, and therefore it is we Muslims who must lead the effort to fix the problem. And I know there are many people, even listening to this, who would say, well, that is an un-Islamic, even anti-Islam message. But I humbly remind them, as a faithful Muslim myself, that the Quran tells us God does not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. Chapter 13, verse 11. This is my defining ethos, to take my share of responsibility as a Muslim for what we as an ummah are contributing to the crisis in Islam today. And, if that ruffles feathers, so be it. I'm not seeking the approval of individual Muslims, of the ulama, or of theologians, or even of academics. I am seeking the approval of only two entities, Imran. One is my creator, and the other is my conscience.
Do you think it's because in Islam people have kind of subjugated women, and now we have this Muslim woman who is speaking out loud, and that kind of offends some sects of the Muslims? Do you think that's one of the reasons?
And you're very right to say one of the reasons. I do think that it is a key reason. In fact, I can tell you that not so long ago, I received a death threat in the language of Urdu, and it described me as a woman writer who is now subject to death. Notice how the would-be assassin zeroed in on the gender. Woman writer who is now subject to death. By the way, just so your viewers can breathe some sigh of relief, when the police traced that email, they realized it came not from Karachi or Islamabad or Lahore. It came from an internet cafe in downtown Toronto, Canada, my city. So even in the diaspora, there are Muslims from Pakistan who are clearly incensed with the fact that a woman is threatening the monopoly on power that men believe they have. Not all of them.
I don't believe it.
I was going to say, notice that I just threw in not all of them, but too many of them. And that is why I relish the fact that, young Muslim men like you are willing to engage in these ideas as much as young Muslim women like me.
What do you think happened? I remember going through history books and all that, the time of Prophet Muhammad was a time of thinking and reflection.
Illumination.
Exactly, and all of that. And suddenly we had the Khilafat, and then everyone ended up murdering each other.
Yes.
Something happened. Do you think that Muslims say that you want to find a solution, go back to the past.
Right.
But past is kind of
sketchy,
fuzzy.
Isn't it?
So how does one come about making a proper decision?
The way I've come about it is, first of all, to recognize that from the earliest days of Islam, extremism within the faith has been a problem. But not because there is something inherently problematic about Islam. It has the raw materials to be humane and thoughtful and reasonable. As you yourself pointed out, Islam came at a time of moral darkness in the Arabian Peninsula, huge disparities in economic wealth and distribution, female infanticide, slavery. And the Prophet's message was one of dignity for all. So that message truly has the potential to be gratifying and uplifting for everybody. But the way we Muslims have grafted a sort of an Arabized tribalism onto the message is a tragedy. And I do believe that it is Arab tribal culture, much of which has infected Pakistan, that is the real culprit here. So, when I go back to the past for lessons about what Islam can be, I usually focus on the period called the Golden Age of Islam, roughly between 800 and 1200 AD, where Islamic civilization led the world in curiosity, creativity, ingenuity, in large part because the tradition of ijtihad, of critical thinking and independent reasoning, debate and dissent reigned supreme. And this is why, I like to point out to my fellow Muslims that there is absolutely nothing imperialist or Western about the ideas that I'm bringing to bear and that other ijtihadists are bringing to bear. Quite the opposite. We're reminding our fellow Muslims that Islam itself once had this tradition of pluralistic and progressive thinking, and that there is no reason except for pure petty politics we cannot have it again. Indeed, I would argue we must revive and democratize ijtihad so that all kinds of Muslims, including Muslim women, know that it is their God-given right to think for themselves. But obviously, Imran, that necessitates very concrete developments like literacy, which is something that, by and large, we don't have in many traditional parts of the Islamic world today. This is why I address the issue in my book, instead of just relying on concepts and ideas.